Chair, fellow speakers. My parents live in Newquay, in Cornwall, in a house that was designed and built by my father. We moved in when I was 3 years old, and I grew up there until I left and joined the Royal Air Force when I was 19. Mum and Dad are still fit and well, now 86 and 93 years old, respectively. My father is computer literate. He orders the weekly shop online. He has a tablet, a mobile phone, and we video call every week. He has a static exercise bike and pedals 3 miles a day. My mother is a keen gardener and is equally active. They are blessed. I have made the journey home for 40 years, and I visit as often as I can. Clearly, the pace of life is now a lot slower, and there is quite a lot of sitting about watching television. Generally, programmes that I don't normally watch, and a new obsession with snooker, which my mother is a particular fan of. Frasier, the American sitcom, is also a favourite, and I think I have seen it so many times I could confidently understudy if a remake really offered. My recurring request before each visit is to help or to do any jobs. This is because they may not be able to do them or manage to do them themselves. So imagine my joy last year at being asked to assist with the tidying and clearing out of the garage. Freedom from quiz shows, American sitcoms and snooker was too delightful a prospect. You order the skip and I'll be there, was my passing comment as I hung up on our weekly call. Fast forward into the day of the clearance, my father and I stood in front of the garage door, and looking at me and winking, he pressed the remote control to open the door. In slow motion, I could see the full horror of our task as first the front of the garage was revealed and the jumbled contents in the depths could be seen once the door was fully open. There were assorted boxes, lawnmowers, tools, plant pots, sundry building materials, a bike, surfboards, you name it, it was in there. Looking at the size of the task, my assessment of the day's work seemed a bit sporty now. And of course, when it comes to projects, I am sure you all know about the 5 Ps. Prior, planning, prevents poor performance. Or my cunning alternate plan, which was to point or hold up random items and say to my dad, skip or keep. After an hour, the skip was filling up nicely, but worryingly, the keep pile was also growing. But more on that a bit later. And then we had a visit from the Commander-in-Chief, Home Command, aka my mother, inquiring if we needed tea. And how is it going? Now, if you know, you know. When the senior commanders visit, the protocol is to make some approving noises, nod, and they will swiftly move on. Sadly, my father didn't know and broke with this protocol, asking for a decision on various plant pots and old gardening tools. Clearly, previous instructions had been forgotten, and there followed an exchange that I will leave to the imagination, but in the most was one way and not in my father's favour. To paraphrase, skip 'em was the chief's response, so in they went. I gently suggested to my dad that he'd let me do the talking on any future visits. My blue-eyed boy status for the moment was intact with my mother. We made steady progress throughout the morning. We relaxed into our roles, made a brawn, in the brains. The skip started to fill, and we had a better work rhythm as we progressed. Although unfortunately another pile had now started, which I called the "that may come in useful" pile. Included in this pile was a bucket with no handle, some rusted chain, and given its size it looked like it should have had a trawler's anchor attached to it, a block and tackle, and an assortment of rusting tools. But more on that later too. It wasn't all work. There was a lot of reminiscing from my dad with some new and some old classic stories that would tickle him so much he would cry laughing at the telling, barely able to get the story out, which left us both laughing uncontrollably. It was a good way to spend some quality time with Dad, and I savoured the moments as we worked steadily. The garage was now having some semblance of order to it, and it looked in better shape. The majority of the rubbish was now in the skip, and it was pretty much full. But let's revisit those piles. I gently guided Dad to the keep it pile, putting my arm around his shoulder, and I said, "What are we going to do with this then, Alfred? 2 stringers with no plugs, a short and long-handled set of shears, some empty plastic storage boxes, and a box of 6-inch nails." I analysed the need to retain each item, picking it up and edging towards the skip, before gently dropping it in with a flourish and a reasoned argument that Dad nodded in agreement. Pile 2 was more interesting. This was the might come in handy pile. I had questions. On what occasion would a large chain or a block and tackle come in handy for you and Mum? A nod and a grudging okay was the response, but he had the last laugh. I couldn't lift the chain. It was a keeper. And finally we were done. Ceremoniously we stood the other side of the garage door, looking at a now ordered interior, and with a full skip at our backs, the door was lowered, and as it clunked shut, I turned to Dad and said, "Well, what's the next project, Claire?" He winked, smiled, and said, "We'd better ask your mother."